Hey, Mistakes listeners, this is Dave, and you know what that means. It's Parenting Mistakes time. This week we watched the Netflix show Some Assembly Required. Interesting show. We recorded this episode on 9/28/2015. This would happen to be episode 26. And as you know, you can follow us on Twitter at Parent Mistakes, and you can like us on Facebook at Parenting Mistakes. Sit back and enjoy the show. So, Todd, I think I told you in a previous episode that we actually went to Fort Casey.
Yes.
Right? So,
Yes.
if you guys are not familiar, obviously, we might want to do another public service message on this episode too. But going back to Fort Casey. In the San Juan Islands, there are several forts that actually guarded the Strait of the Strait is the San Juans. Is it Strait of Juan de Fuca?
Strait of Juan de Fuca.
Thank you. So this happened at the turn of the century. So these forts were built basically with the intent to basically blast any ships that might be coming down the strait.
Correct.
And so when you get to like either Fort Worden or Fort Casey, we're going to Fort Worden next month, they are these gigantic bunkers that are built into the ground, and they are amazing. They are really, really cool. And you get there, and you're able to basically go, and each one of these forts has now become a state park. They all closed down at about the 50s. I want to say the last operating one was in 56. The reason this happened was the airplane. Basically, you had all these guns that were in fixed spots that were able to shoot a ship coming into the strait, and suddenly they had a plane that could just bomb them.
Correct.
So now we are left with these humongous, gigantic, archaic caves and catacombs of fort.
Terribly fun.
And what?
Terribly fun.
Oh, and they are a ton of fun. But I will say this, going as a parent for the first time with my kids to Fort Casey, when I went to Fort Worden or Casey the first time, I found it incredibly thrilling. And why is it thrilling? Because you can climb up these ladders. Let me back up. There's nothing safe about these forts. Nothing safe whatsoever. And I remember thinking my mom would die if she saw me running around doing what I was doing in these forts, because they're all made out of cement. There is, we live in this world now where there's a safety net for everything. Everything's rubberized. The kid falls down and they just bounce right back up, right? There's a bubble of less trouble everywhere, right? This is not the case for those forts. And let me tell you, getting there with my 3-year-old or my 6-year-old and watching them go was just as thrilling as any ride at Disneyland. I am watching my child basically climb these ladders. I wish I had a picture, because there are these tiny narrow ladders that go into deep dark holes. You don't know where they go. They could be climbing into cannon shell things. I mean, I don't think there's anything they can do. There's nothing the Parks Department can do to make those places safe. And you spend the entire time, okay, here, and actually I've been to Fort Worden without kids recently after we had gone there in high school and stuff, and it wasn't as exciting. But this was probably the most thrilling that this has ever been for me, because I am petrified that these kids are going to fall down and break their heads. Because they could. They totally could. It's not like my imagination, right?
So not necessarily fun thrilling.
Well, it's thrilling in that, yes.
As in thriller, as in we watch a thriller on
yes,
TV or a movie.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
It's exciting, except we might also get stabbed the next time we watch it.
It's a whole new dynamic in parenting for me, to basically have a part of myself, which is my children, out there on the maybe 1 foot by 1 foot ledge of a bypass or something on these forts, because they're nuts. They're all over the place. They're like that. It's like these. It's like watching here's what it is. It's like literally watching your kid play Mario in real life. Yes. Right? They're doing platforming in front of you, but it's real. Thankfully, there's no Koopa Troopers or anything like that, or people throwing turtles at them. But it's just like that, and it's very scary.
Which is why if you ask any self-aware parent, they will tell you that once they have children, their perspective on a few things does tend to change, doesn't it?
Let me tell you, yes. Yes, absolutely. And, my mom said this for years. You just won't get it until you have kids of your own, right? And, I totally get it now because I actually have no control over it. And the other thing that's interesting about it is I've got to let it happen. I'm not going to be that parent that's like, oh, darling, you just can only look at the fort, right? I'm not that guy. I want them to be thrilled. I want them to have adventure. I want them to play real Mario versus Mario on the TV, right? That's what it's all about. But boy, again, yes, very thrilling. I'm sure you've had this. Is this an experience that you've forgotten?
No.
Okay, that's right. Well, right, because you have a daughter that's driving now, right?
Yeah, it changed. It doesn't. The terror doesn't change. Well, the terror changes. It doesn't lessen. It's just different styles of terror.
I like the terror level.
Yes. So it isn't. Yeah. Instead of me trying to make sure my kids don't fall down a hole, it's me out there working on the car so that it runs correctly, so that they can get from point A to point B.
Right.
Like I did last weekend for 5 hours.
Yes, I poor old Todd. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
You had a car breakdown, which is never fun for anybody.
No,
you know what? And this is actually a really good thing to bring up on parenting mistakes. What I did this last weekend was not a mistake. It needs to occur, right?
Yes.
And the thing is that I think to myself, even if they began to fall, they actually have mechanisms within themselves that will try to grab the ledge, right? They have self-preservation.
Yes, they do.
And it's always this, we got to test the limits. I mean, I would encourage any parent to go to Fort Casey. Maybe not for a 2-year-old.
No, probably not.
Whose mind is not completely there, but as they get older, this is what they need to do. This is what parenting is about. And if you want to test your limits, boosh, Fort Casey. We have no transition, right? Or do we?
Well, I was going to say, so what you're saying is parenting.
That was my little song, the transition song, right?
No, I was going to say parenting has some assembly required.
Oh, yeah.
Is that forced?
Oh,
too much?
Yeah.
That work?
Maybe you are onto something about the tune.
See? Listen
some assembly required. Oh my goodness.
Okay, so we watched Some Assembly Required.
Yes.
Should I intro this?
Say again?
Should I intro this?
Yeah, you should.
All right. So this is labeled. Oh, by the way, you talked about intros. Quick caveats. I'm Todd. That's Dave.
Oh, that's right. That's public service. Public service.
We're both dads. We know just enough about parenting to be dangerous. We're not experts. We just do our thing, and we watch one episode of a show, trying to replicate what parents must do sometimes in terms of watching whatever is in front of them or whatever a kid presents to them. We evaluate it. We don't give necessarily thumbs up and thumbs down all the time. We're not going to tell you how to parent. This is just our perspective on things.
Mm-hmm.
And we get some of our information from Wikipedia because it's terrible.
It's terribly easy.
Yes.
Such as our viewing on Netflix, which is
okay.
also terribly easy.
And as I tell my students, Wikipedia is okay. It should be the beginning of your knowledge, not the end.
Right.
Okay. So
hopefully none of your students listen to this show, do they?
I've had a few listen, yes.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Okay.
They're not as, they say, well, it sounds like you.
Yeah, that's right.
That other guy. All right. So Some Assembly Required is labeled as a teen comedy series.
Yep.
Which that term is pretty broad, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, forgive me. This is a Netflix exclusive too, right? Wasn't it?
This is Netflix. Well, it's on YTV in Canada.
Oh, okay.
And streams on Netflix in the United States. Yeah, Netflix is starting to suck in all the shows here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fair to say that kids watch a variety of stuff. Sometimes younger kids watch stuff that's probably geared to an older audience. And then sometimes when kids get a little older, they still enjoy watching some of the younger stuff just out of nostalgia.
Sure.
And then you get to a point where you're like in college and you just sort of say, I'm going to watch the Cartoon Network because I enjoy being juvenile. And I think the Cartoon Network knows that, which is why they write some of the content that they do.
I have to admit, I watched another episode of Teen Titans Go.
Oh, there you go.
And it was hilarious.
All right, so this is about a guy named Jarvis Rains, who is 14, and who is got a whole truckload of money because he apparently sued a toy company over a defective chemistry set that blew up his house.
I would have loved to have seen that first episode.
Yeah, maybe we need
Right?
to go back and watch that sometime.
Yeah.
So he takes all this money, he creates a toy company, he gets all his friends to help him run it, and then they engage in a whole bunch of sitcom-style shenanigans.
Yep.
And they invent new products.
I want to
Which-
say quote-unquote friends.
Yeah. The standard group of teenagers, some of whom they play various typecast roles. Sort of
Yes.
the saucy sidekick and the sort of geeky accountant guy.
Well,
and-
I read through the Wikipedia too, and I was shocked to read that actually one of the characters is played off as dumb. They actually use the word dumb.
Yes.
And the blonde, they actually use the word dim-witted.
Yes.
Dumb and dim-witted are actually two personalities within this show, and the show doesn't refute it, right? Like whoever
No.
is populating the Wikipedia for them is like, yep, we play up these stereotypes. I get, Canada, they can do whatever they want, right?
Hey,
Yeah.
let's be careful. People do listen to us in Canada. We're gonna get hate mail for that comment. All right, so tell me what you thought of this show.
I want to be fair. I really do.
No, you don't.
I do.
You don't have to be fair. They put
Well-
it out.
Yeah, they do. They put it out there. I couldn't. Okay, it always. It's interesting as again. I've been down this road so many times already, but I'll say it again. Once again, these themes resurface: the snarky friendships, the sarcasm, the high level of sarcasm, the always a thing in the back of my brain is like, why are these people together? They don't like each other. We're talking. I mean, I would say that the core, the heart of the show is the lead, right? And he
Yes.
seems to be pretty fair. Is it Colton? Is that how you say that? Colton? Or no, that's the actor's name. Jarvis?
Jarvis.
Jarvis. Okay, so he actually is obviously the moral center of the show. It's another one of these kind of like these gimmies. Like, here is Jarvis, and he's being pulled in all sorts of different directions by all these character types, right? The overdoer, the overachiever, I think they actually had like an accountant type. Do they have an
Yes.
accountant type guy, like the
They do.
nerd, right? And then the
Yes.
dim-witted folks are pulling him in all sorts of different directions. So yeah, the basic plot, which is just nuts. I'm like, I'm not. So part of my problem is like I don't know why they're doing what they're doing. Right? There's so many loopholes to the show as to. Okay, so real quickly, basically they have a competition coming up that's like Monopoly, and they
Yes.
have a ton of Monopoly money. It's a cat-based game, and it was like cat dollars or something. I don't remember what it was. So they've got all this Monopoly money, and it gets stolen by their adversary. And the adversary then takes all this money and puts it in a bank vault. A real legitimate bank, where they can't actually get to the money. So the plot of the show is to try to break into the bank and get their fake money. And the entire time, if it's for teens, I'd be frustrated as a teen, just say, why not just use your printer and print out the $3 trillion that you just lost in the bank? Why is this such a threat, right? They don't even get into that.
You gotta let go of the plot. You gotta let go of the plot.
Right. And so if I let go of the plot, then what do I have? I'm asking.
Dumb.
I don't have anything at all.
Okay, so here's my question. This is related to your Fort Casey analogy. To sort of say, okay, your perspective changes a little bit. So, when was Saved by the Bell on?
What time was it, or like
No,
when?
like when was that in the 90s?
I want to
early
say late
2000s?
80s, early 90s. I want to say I remember not watching it in the 80s. Like all the good cartoons that come on, and then Saved by the Bell, and I'm like, all right, it's time to go outside and play.
Okay, so I did not watch Saved by the Bell either back in the day. Okay, I'm looking this up. 89 to 93. So we would have been, seniors in
Oops.
juniors in high school going into college.
Watching cartoons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I watched cartoons in college.
Okay.
It wasn't cool in high school, but once you got to college, then you're back. Would people in our stage of life watching Saved by the Bell back in the day have had the same reaction to that show as we do to this show now?
Okay, so are you asking me if they would?
Yeah.
Okay, you know what Saved by the Bell's saving grace is? There were like 30 networks at that time, and there wasn't a whole lot of content in TV at that time.
Okay, so
I think there were a lot of people that just watched Saved by the Bell because it was on and there was nothing else going on.
all right, that aside though, we're talking about quality of, character development and that sort of thing.
Like, are you just saying that kids like to watch this type of show because it's just on, or?
Right. If a 40-something watched Saved by the Bell back in 1989, would they have had the same reaction as we're having to this show now?
Oh man, that is a tough call. And,
Yeah,
well, let me tell you why. Because I feel like, at the very least, Saved by the Bell actually had some intriguing plots. Intriguing. They were never, like, I want to be fair, but they were never really stupid.
Okay.
I never felt like a plot on Save the Bell. I mean, when you're making this comparison, right? I'm like, I never felt like this is just downright stupid.
Is that just your romanticized viewpoint of Saved by the Bell because it's from a younger era?
No, I'm trying to think.
I don't know.
Right. I mean, Mr. Belding was a buffoon, right? Screech, I mean, those relationships were never going to work, right?
Right.
And they kind of, yes, there is a trend that comes from that, but this was just...
Yeah, my biggest problem with this show is that it's just kind of dumb from start to finish.
Right.
There's nothing... I sort of felt like... when you see... and you'll experience this more as your kids get a little older, and I've sort of been through this phase, like the school play when they're in elementary school, where you put a bunch of kids on a stage who are young and have no acting skills, nor do we expect them to, and they deliver their lines like they're reading them off a page.
Okay, I haven't been through this yet, but I will.
You remember this. I mean, you remember bits and pieces of this sort of,
sure.
Or you've seen it.
Yeah.
I almost feel like this show is done that way. Like if they actually had scripts in front of them and they were reading them mechanically, like they were sort of thespian-challenged teenagers, that's sort of what we get here.
Yeah.
And as you said, the plot is so far-fetched, and we've got sort of the cliche clueless adult, the bank lady,
yeah,
and the antagonist that I guess is like, I'm reading this as like, and they don't explain this really, that I guess is a former employee or previous owner of the company, but then she has like an alter ego where she is in disguise, and
right,
she has a strange look to her, and I don't know. I'm not sure what the goal here is. I mean,
well, again, yeah, and like we say, okay, so we throw the plot away, and I would say, okay, you could say the same for Richie Rich, right? But at the very least, the Richie Rich, they totally embraced this idea of no plot, and it's all about sight gag, right? It's all about outrageous, larger-than-life characters. And each one of the characters they just fall short, in my opinion. And so whatever sight gags they have for these guys, they just...
Right. But the difference being, I felt like when we watched Richie Rich, I don't know. It was just better. It was
Yeah,
better,
no, I agree.
Better acted, better plot, better production value.
Likeable kids.
Likeable kids. You know, I mean, yeah, it was just better.
Yeah.
So again, I don't know if that matters. I mean, that's the hard part for us as parents is we sort of say, okay, we look at content from a standpoint of, say, I don't know if we want to say education, because we know that sometimes entertainment is just entertainment. But my parents would say things like, is this edifying? In other words, is there any value here, or is it just blah type of stuff? You know what I'm saying?
I think edifying is an amazing word to be used here in this episode, because I would have to say that there is nothing edifying about this. I can't even say that it's entertaining.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, I hate ripping into a show because I know there are folks out there that just put a lot of effort into this stuff, and you and I have never actually sat down and said, hey, let's, create a TV show for kids to watch, right? I have no idea how hard or complicated it is to do.
It's probably extremely difficult.
But wow. I mean, put your money elsewhere, right?
Well, and again, that's the dilemma. I mean, as parents, same thing that we've seen with a lot of shows. Is it clean? For the most part, yes. Not really. We don't really have, adult content here. I think some of the antagonist is a strange character, but that doesn't really matter necessarily. I mean, you can have weirdness. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's just a question of whether or not you think that this has really any value. I mean, teenagers are going to watch stuff that's to adults is going to seem dumb.
Yeah,
that's just kind of the thing with being teens. And when you're in the teen years, you're kind of in your own little world, and what you find to be funny is, it's teen level humor.
Yep. Yeah, of course, but
at the same time, I sort of feel like there's actually teen content out there that has some level of sophistication.
Sure. Yeah, and all you get from this is just snarkiness, people that don't like each other. Oh, and the idea that adults are just dumb.
Yes.
Watching the Banker Lady was just agonizing because I'm like, are you kidding me? Right? Like you're just. Oh, and the solution to the show is just ridiculous, right? It's just. Whatever came out the typewriter, what it's like in some ways, too. It's like they just did a draft of the show, and that was it. Like, we wrote a show. The show's there.
There it is.
There's the show.
Copy
Here we
print. Go. Rehearsal? We don't need rehearsal. Just run it. First take. Fantastic.
Oh, man. I'll tell you what. Here's another thing I'll say. If this show lasts to season 4, I want to see what it looks like at season 4. Right? Like, if it really makes it to, like, a lot of these shows seem to make it to season 3, and that's about it. Even some of these popular shows, like, they make to season 3. But if they make it to season 4, I want to watch an episode of that. See where they have progressed, if at all. I'm just curious, because, wow.
Yeah, I'm not that curious.
Okay.
So, we do apologize, some assembly required people, if you're listening. We're nice people. We want to like stuff, and
yep.
I don't know. Again, is this terrible content? No. If parents let their kids watch it, fine. You're just letting your kid watch 22 minutes of. And again, we said this. We watch one episode. Maybe all the other episodes are highly intelligent.
I'll be honest with you. When I read the Wikipedia site, they talked about how he acquired that money. I thought, wow, that's intriguing. How he is suing a company to make money, right? To get all this cash. He sued them, like he had to get a lawyer and all that stuff, and that
which is
seemed interesting.
A disturbing plot point to begin with, I
suppose. It's a little bit weird, but I'm like, wow, okay, that's kind of interesting. But
hey, kids, go find a corporation you can sue so that you can get a lot of money and start your own toy company.
Correct.
Anything else?
Nope.
This
Nope.
show is some assembly required.
Yes.
As in, the plot is not in the box. Nor are the good characters. All right, you can follow us on Twitter. We'd love it if you would. Parent Mistakes, or on Facebook, Parenting Mistakes. And there are people following us.
You can like us, too.
Like us, sorry.
Yeah.
Like us on Facebook.
You were so hard on me when I was like, what is that Facebook?
I know, I'm sorry. I apologize. We're in our 40s. We're in our 40s. We're not supposed to, know everything about social media, right?
Yeah, you know what? Someone's going to start reviewing our show, and then we're going to be in big trouble.
That's fine.
No. The whole podcast based on reviewing
review our show. Review us on iTunes. It's just fine.
All right. Well,
until then.
Yep, until then.